This week in Linux, we have a lot to talk about. We have a new terminal emulator that's getting a lot of attention lately with Ghostty. And also we have two distros to talk about with their latest releases, one being CachyOS and the other one Nobara Linux. And we're also going to be talking about the latest release candidate for GIMP with GIMP 3.0 RC2. All of this and more on This Week in Linux, the weekly news show that keeps you up to date with what's going on in the Linux and open source world. Now let's jump right into your source for Linux good news. This episode of Twill is sponsored by Sandfly Security. More on them later. Terminal emulators have been around forever for us Linux users, but recent years, we've seen a sort of resurgence or renaissance, if you will, with the popularity of terminal emulators, because there's getting more and more ideas and more apps that are coming on the scene, such as Alacrity, which happened a couple years ago, and I think might have been the first, maybe not, but it's first I heard of having GPU acceleration in terminal. And then we have a new one that is getting some hype right now, and that is called Ghostty. So first of all, I would like to say that this animation on their website with the ghost effect is good. And I like the name, Ghostty, with TTY at the end. I like it. A lot of them are doing that now, the TTY thing. But I like the look of Ghostty, and there's some cool ideas in it. But there's an issue that I have with it that's not necessarily a problem. It's just like a personal thing that I don't like related to the UI, but we'll get to that in a second. So Ghostty is a new open source cross-platform terminal by HashiCorp co-founder Mitchell Hashimoto. Is it Hashimoto? Has it always been HashiCorp? And I've been saying HashiCorp wrong? Anyway, it aims to be a fast, feature-rich, and use platform-native GUIs while maintaining cross-platform functionality. Now, they claim to offer the platform-native GUI and also the cross-platform functionality, but there are a couple issues here. First of all, let's talk about the positive things we can discuss on this. For example, the GPU acceleration that I talked about with Alacrity is also available in Ghostty, and you have GPU acceleration with OpenGL in Linux and Metal on macOS. You also get a fast startup and responsiveness. You have a support for Windows, as in the window of the application, not Windows. And you also have support for tabs, split panes, and theming. So if you want to combine these things, you can have multiple windows with multiple tabs and multiple split panes and all that sort of stuff. And with theming, you have over 100 themes to choose from. It has built-in shell integration for Bash, ZSH, Fish, Elvish as well. I've never even tried Elvish, but maybe that's a Mac thing. I don't know, because I've never heard of that. Actually, in the chat, real quick, in the chat, is Elvish a Linux thing or a Mac thing? I've never heard of that. So the chat says that it is Mac-based, and therefore that's why I haven't heard of it. But also, we have advanced capabilities with Xterm compatibility, ligature/font support, Kitty graphics protocol support, and custom shaders, as well as the ability to customize the application with the editable configuration file. Now let's talk about a couple of the things that I have a bit of an issue with. So the platform native GUI thing is not exactly accurate because yes, it probably is platform native on Mac because I don't think there's many options on Mac. But with the Linux stuff, it's made with Zig and GTK4/libadwaita. So that is native, yes. GTK and libadwaita are native to Linux. But to say platform native GUI is not exactly accurate because if you put this application inside of KDE Plasma, for example, it will not look like it's a native application in terms of being integrated into the rest of the system. So if you use GNOME or something GTK-based, then you're probably fine. It'll probably look good. But if you use a tiling window manager or a KDE Plasma as an option, then it's probably not going to look as you expect. For those who don't know, GTK has its very specific look and feel that if you run it in anything else, it still looks exactly the same as it did. I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. I think that applications should have a look however they want. Like, for example, on Windows, if an application is specific and custom, looks nothing like the system, no one really cares. I kind of feel the same way about on Linux as well. So one example that comes to mind is Spotify. Spotify looks exactly the same no matter what platform you're using it on. and it doesn't matter what the toolkit is, you can't tell the difference. So I'm okay with that kind of thing. But if you're going to talk about having platform native GUIs, I feel like you're talking about more being integrated into the look and feel of the system. And GTK, while is integrated into GTK-based desktops, I wouldn't call that platform native. The other thing that I'm not exactly on board with is the claim of maintaining cross-platform functionality when it doesn't really. There are a lot of cool features that are Mac OS only at the moment, at least. Based on my testing, there were a few. I didn't try the Mac OS version, but I'm saying like on their documentation, it says this feature is only available for Mac OS. So in that sense, I would not say that they're maintaining cross-platform functionality if there are anything that's specific to a particular platform. Even if it's Linux. If it's specific to Linux, then it's not really cross-platform either way. But in this case, it's the other way. So Ghostty Terminal 1.0 is pretty cool. There's a lot of benefits to it. The GPU acceleration is cool, and it's definitely aimed at power users. How do you know a project is aimed at power users? Well, first of all, it's a terminal application, so there's that. But another clear sign, which is this applies to literally any application, it doesn't have to be terminal. If you go to the download section, and then you go to the package manager section for the Linux version of it, then you see that it has official support for Arch Linux, Gentoo, NixOS, and Void Linux. If those are the only ones you support, very much a power user type of approach. Now, you can get it also available for Fedora, OpenSUSE, and Ubuntu, but those are community maintained packages, not officially maintained by Ghostty themselves. Usually the reverse. But yeah, I thought that was kind of interesting enough to point out. So Ghostty offers modern features in a terminal application that has really good performance, just like basically every terminal emulator these days. I don't know what a GPU acceleration feature is needed for. Like, if you in the comments, let me know what value does GPU acceleration benefit you on a terminal emulator? Because basically, when I use a terminal emulator, it doesn't matter. It's very fast because it's a terminal. I don't know why this is something that people want necessarily, but I would love to know. So if you do know, let me know in the comments. The CachyOS team have announced the latest release of their distro. By the way, is it CachyOS or CachyOS? I'm not sure. Could someone from the team clarify that for me? I would appreciate it. Either way, the latest release comes with kernel optimizations, a switch to Rusty CL, improved performance, and bug fixes. So let's talk about those. Not just the bug fixes, all of that. One of the most notable changes is that the default kernel is now optimized using Auto FDO. For those unfamiliar, Auto FDO stands for Auto Feedback Directed Optimization, and it is a type of profile-guided optimizations used to enhance the performance of binary executables. And also with this, profiling workloads include sysbench, Git operations, kernel compilations, and more. And the future plans are related to supporting merging profiles with LLVM 19 for broader optimization. For some graphics improvements, they have replaced the default OpenCL driver in the Mesa stack with the Rusty CL option. And they've also added a script for running applications via Zinc. For scheduler management, they've introduced the SCX_loader for native switching of your scheduler with dedicated configuration files. They've also made some improvements for wireless use. They have now enabled by default support for Bluetooth, which is kind of surprising it wasn't there by default already, but that's good. Also, they have optimized the Wi-Fi support because the wireless-regdb or reg database is now installed by default to improve Wi-Fi performance and also regional compliance. And there are many bug fixes as well as some improvements specifically for the handheld edition. So there is some improvements for the power profiles. They've resolved a handling issue for power profiles, and they've also added support for Wi-Fi 6 in the handheld edition. If you'd like to learn more or try out CachyOS for yourself, you'll find links in the show notes. The Nobara team have announced the latest release of this gamer-focused Linux distro with Nobara 41. For those unfamiliar, Nobara is a distribution that is a remix of Fedora Linux, so Nobara 41 is, you guessed it, based on Fedora 41. Nobara 41 comes with Linux 6.12 LTS kernel, and it has multiple desktop environment options to choose from, with KDE Plasma being the flagship DE, but also offering GNOME and also 2 editions that are still KDE based, but they're more like Steam Deck type of things, where they're an HTPC edition and the handheld edition. Nobara 41 switches to the open source NVIDIA graphics driver by default, along with the CUDA Devil or developer option for additional CUDA package support. It also switches to the latest stable Vulkan drivers by default to improve support for some Vulkan games. Nobara 41 also ships Mesa-lib-gallium-freeworld compiled with X264/X265 codecs to improve screen recording. The Nobara Driver Manager tool was updated to include a new option to install the Broadcom wireless driver, and the Nobara Package Manager tool now has the ability to easily install, search, remove, and manage Flatpak apps for users. Nobara 41 changes how the installer works by switching to the version of Calamares forked by the CachyOS Linux team. That is CachyOS, that's how you're supposed to say it. I always want to say chaos, but it's CachyOS. And this offers more options like an on-screen keyboard and more. The welcome utility for Nobara is now going to use the Discord option from the Flatpak beta channel in Nobara 41, because this version of Discord supports screen sharing on Wayland and also includes something finally that people have been wanting, and that is that the audio works while screen sharing. Nobara 41 introduces a new Nobara tweak tool, which lets users control the automatic mounting of disk partitions, input controller packages, and automatic updating on HTPC and handheld editions, and many more things. There is so much to talk about in this release that I'll leave the rest up to you. You can check out the links in the show notes. This episode of This Week in Linux is sponsored by Sandfly Security. You chose Linux for its stability and security, but as threats grow more sophisticated, detecting them in time without putting your system at risk is more critical than ever. Traditional endpoint agents can cause downtime and performance issues, leaving visibility gaps. But that's where Sandfly Security comes in, because Sandfly Security offers the agentless Linux security platform that you need. Sandfly not only does endpoint detection and response, but also performs SSH key tracking, password auditing, and drift detection to find the widest range of threats. Whether your servers are in the cloud, on premises, or even embedded devices, Sandfly protects them all without the need of risky agent installations. Now, Ken Kleiner, the senior security engineer at the University of Massachusetts, explains it best. Sandfly is the first product I've seen that accurately and quickly detects thousands of signs of compromise on the Linux platform. Its unique method automates tasks that would be impossible to perform manually. So get fast, non-invasive protection for your critical systems, no agents, no downtimes, just smarter security that works. Visit thisweekinlinux.com/Sandfly to learn more. That's thisweekinlinux.com/SANDFLY. The GIMP developers have announced another release candidate for GIMP 3.0. We're going to do a big deep dive when 3.0 does come out, but for now, let's talk about the highlights of what's coming. Although I might make a video walkthrough for this RC, and I have been in graphics for many, many years. So if you want me to do that kind of thing, like a reaction video walkthrough, let me know in the comments. So the second release candidate introduces important bug fixes and enhancements aimed at addressing community feedback that they got from the RC1 release. So one of the critical bug fixes was the improvements for settings migrations. So 2.10 settings migrations, there was an issue for importing. They have now fixed that for preferences from GIMP 2.10 to 3.0. And they've also fixed missing font issues for macOS, as well as improved compatibility with GIMP and Darktable 5.0. So the Gaggle Filter API has added a public filter API for immediate and non-destructive effects. And immediate effects is an interesting way of saying destructive. It's, I like it. I mean, I don't like destructive effects, but I do like the way they're saying that. Anyway, also, they have done layer blend spaces, so they've improved the color profile rendering for certain layer modes. And they've also done some stuff related to some package management because of they're doing an experimental app image. So for a long time, they've been supporting Flatpaks, but they didn't have anything else that they gave an ability to use for a package management, unless you got it from your distribution. But officially, GIMP only does Flatpak. But they're now doing an experimental app image for those who would like to try that out. You can, test it and give them feedback. But also, of course, the Flatpak is still available. And speaking of that, the new Flatpak app ID is now available for nightly builds so that you can have side-by-side installation for multiple different versions of their Flatpaks. They've also added file support for CMYK PAM files in the PNM plugin. So a quick overview of what has changed between the latest stable version and the upcoming 3.0 stable version, and that is a lot. An insane amount, because it's been a while since those differences have happened. So we're going to be talking about much more depth when the official one comes out. But for now, the biggest one is easily the port to GTK3. That's finally completed, and that has been in the works for quite a while. For those who don't know, GTK3 is this will be the first version that is supporting GTK3. And yes, GTK4 is out, and GTK5 is probably not very far away from now. But this is a huge change because GIMP has been around for a very long time. And those who don't know, GTK actually came from GIMP. The first GTK first version and up to GTK2, it was on the GIMP project. And then the GNOME team took it over at some, I don't remember when they took it over, but they took it over. So it actually has to do with GIMP rather than GNOME. So also 3.0 introduces multi-layer selections, non-destructive filters, an updated API, and as well as support for many new formats like PSB and JPEG XL. And they also expanded the color management. So there's a lot of differences. And we're going to dive deep into these differences when 3.0 comes out. But again, if you'd like me to do a walkthrough reaction style video of this RC2, let me know in the comments. So OpenShot 3.3 has been released, and there is a lot of cool stuff in here. First of all, we're going to talk about the UI. It's not the biggest thing we're going to talk about. I'm super excited about the next thing, but it is very important to have a good-looking UI. And Cosmic Dusk is the new theme, and it is it's a big improvement to the previous OpenShot UI. Now, I think there are some still ways to improve it here and there. I mean, I'm a graphics designer, so I would have some notes there, but I do think it is vastly improved from the other version. So that's very cool to see. The biggest thing is easily the ripple editing improvements. So ripple editing is very powerful. It's very useful, and a lot of people kind of require it. So for those who don't know, ripple editing is a lot of different things, but ripple delete is probably the most important piece. We'll get to that in a second. We have ripple select, which lets you quickly select all items that are at the right of a clicked position. So if you hold Alt and then click, it will select what you clicked on and also everything after it, which is awesome. Gives you a lot more control of how you manipulate the timeline. And then there's also the ripple slicing, which now supports multiple layer selections and realigns the timeline as you do it, which is great. But like I said, the most important thing is ripple delete, because a lot of people actually think this is critical and they will not use anything that doesn't have it. And I've actually seen videos where people were testing out open source editors, then not finding ripple delete and just giving up at that point. So this is really important. So what does ripple delete do? Well, normally when you delete a clip that you have done cuts on, it will leave a gap in the timeline for where that clip was. Ripple delete will automatically adjust so that it doesn't leave any gaps. So it pulls everything behind it forward, however much of the clip how much time that clip actually took. So it's really cool. And they've also done some keyboard shortcuts to include in the ripple delete function. So you hold Shift Delete, and that will activate the ripple delete, which is very, very cool to see. They've also done a lot of improvements for zooming. So the zoom slider enhancements include frame boundary banding, draggable selections, and many more. They've also simplified the handling of large batches of clips with better snapping and faster operations for the drag and drop functionality for like multiple files. They've added a new recovery menu that seamlessly recovers projects for autosave files with time-based recovery stuff, which is very nice. They've also made it so that when you click on effects or keyframes, it now auto-opens the properties dock for more intuitive editing, so you can get automatically showing the properties. You can now easily match your project's profile to imported file formats for streamlined workflows, and the frame boundary support is now improving the timeline precision so you can have alternating color bands, ensuring exact edits. There's also a lot of bug fixes. So the Windows 11 auto compatibility has been fixed. So they fixed a crucial audio sync and preferences issue caused by Windows 11's 24H2 update. And for those who are using Windows 11, I'm sorry, but you can now use OpenShot with it better. Also, there's a color picker fix on Linux. So the pick screen color now works reliably for effects like chroma keying and stuff like that on Linux, which is awesome. And they've also done some improvements for exporting profiles. So the dropdowns and preferences now behave consistently, fixing issues with improper selections. You can see the rest of the bug fixes in the release notes that I'll link in the show notes. They've also done a lot of improvements for performance and usability. So like there's batch updates. This is basically like mass updates, such as dragging hundreds of clips are now significantly faster to do. You can also have better performance with the undo and redo operations on large projects. So if you have massive things that you're working on and you want to undo something, it previously was taking quite a while, and they've improved the performance a lot on that. So that is great to see. And they've also made it possible to select and scroll imported files. So imported files are auto-selected and centered in the project files view for quick access, which is really good. And not a lot of editors do that because sometimes you have to figure out where the files are that you just imported. Now, in some editors, you can scroll around manually and it'll be highlighted, and that's good enough. But automatically scrolling to it, much better. They've also fixed some keyboard shortcuts, which is great. So they've standardized some of their shortcuts for better usability and consistency, which I love to see. And they've also made some improvements for the dock widgets, as well as the export screen has now benefited from improvements like the start and end frame values refresh automatically, and also advanced settings retain user preferences. So if you want to do multiple exports, you can actually have it retained, which is always nice. OpenShot is looking better and better these days. For a while, I used to see OpenShot as just a basic editor for those who want to do simple tasks like cuts and trims and stuff like that. And now, though, it's looking very, very promising. There's a lot of cool stuff, especially the ripple delete. I mean, that is one of the most important pieces, in my opinion, of this release, and all the other ripple features as well. It has me second guessing my previous thoughts, and I need to revisit this project because Ripple is such a critical feature that basically everybody wants it, and those who don't know about it. Although I kind of use it both here and there. I don't always use Ripple Delete. I do a combination of both. So that's very cool. But I'm excited to try out OpenShot 3.3, and if you'd like to learn more, then you'll find links in the show notes. The Kdenlive team have announced the latest release of their open source video editor with Kdenlive 24.12, and there are many new features and improvements for this release. The Kdenlive team have been just crushing it lately because 24.12 has crushed some bugs and also added some really good features. So this release has a lot of bug fixes with like resolving crashes in audio capture, effect zones, high DPI rendering, and subtitle editing. They've also refined the rotoscoping, the proxies, and also project management workflows, as well as fixed some laggy stuff with like the EXIF orientation issues and also some archiving problems. They've also added fail-safes for invalid project files and script names, which is very nice. So some of the new features is that it's now possible to resize multiple timeline items at the same time, as well as being able to do single frame mixing. So the same track transitions, that sort of stuff. Very cool. And you can now quickly add markers and guidelines in specific categories. Now, what does that mean by categories? It's kind of like the way they do labeling and coloring for the different guides. So you can create a category that has a specific color attached to it, and you can say, give me this color in that kind of way. Now, this is very powerful because for those who don't use markers and guidelines in video editing, you should. They're very helpful. I do it all the time. Literally every single video I ever make has lots of markers and guides. You should definitely do that. But this is really nice to have even more quicker ways to do it. The next thing that they added is a new shortcut to, well, I'm not really sure what it means because it says Shift Delete to extract clips from the timeline. Now, I don't know what they mean by extracting the clip from the timeline because the only thing I can think of is Ripple Delete, but they don't say Ripple Delete. And if it is Ripple Delete, they should say that. So I'm just kind of confused by what they mean by extracting a clip. And also it's a delete key implying that it's getting rid of it. So it's not like making a clip of this piece or something. I don't know. Anyway, that's cool if it is ripple delete. If it isn't, then I'm very curious what it is. So they've done a lot of stuff for subtitles, including adding support for Advanced Substation Alpha, or an acronym that you can read for yourself. Like, that's genuinely what it's called. Anyway, this is a widely used text-based format renowned for its flexibility and creating highly styled and customized subtitles. These subtitles support advanced features such as font family. I don't know if you can read this. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm seeing. These subtitles support advanced features such as font family, size and color, text outlines and shadows, alignment and positioning, scaling and rotations, margins and spacing and effects and all sorts of stuff, including masking and other enhancements, which is very cool. These sound very good. I love all of those possibilities for the subtitles. Very cool to see. But that acronym... There's also a new subtitle manager for integrated style management. So there's the files section, so you can create, import, export there. There's also the layers and content section, which lets you create and remove subtitle tracks and also apply styling to those tracks. Then there's the style section where you can, of course, create and manage styles. And then, of course, the info section, which will display details about your subtitles. There's a new subtitle style editor, which is kind of similar to the titler inside of Kdenlive, which gives you a lot of options to control the look and feel of it with the shadow and the outline and the text color and all that sort of stuff. So you can have like comprehensive styling options for you. And they also did animated subtitles. So it has banner and scroll effects that are basically allowing you to do it from left to right or up and down. And this is cool that you can have this, but I'm not really sure how helpful that would be. I guess maybe if you're doing like a lyric video for a song, that might be cool. But I would also be more specific about how I did those kinds of things. So I'm not sure the value, but definitely the next one where it has the different like word being colorized. So basically it has a karaoke style where it will color the word as it gets to it. And I like that a lot. But the other one, not sure how valuable. Because like if you're talking very fast, would it just like scroll a lot, like just like credits across your face? I don't know. They've also improved the speech to text stuff. So this is really cool because you'll have a better, more reliable experience with it. So they've polished it for smoother and more just rendering and that sort of stuff. So they've improved the GPU translation and threading issues. They've also updated whisper settings and virtual environment packages, making it just an overall better experience for the speech-to-text functions with Whisper. They've also improved keyframe rendering for like bounce, circular, and exponential types of keyframes, which is very nice. And they've also added a new color correction effect with HSL primaries and HSL range. 2025 is looking very good for open source video editing and video editing on Linux in general. I'm so happy to see these advancements and stuff like that for these editors, and I can't wait to try it out. But there is something else that is coming in a future release of Kdenlive that I have to show you. It's not out yet. It's a preview, but it's very cool. And that is automatic masking of elements inside of your video. This is great. So this is using AI to create these object masks to remove the background of theoretically anything, just as long as you do the proper layout of the path and to create the mask and that sort of stuff. So if you scroll down here, you'll see this an example of this where they have animated the dinosaur with the background removed. And this is just fantastic. So whenever this comes out, I can't wait to play with it, because this is something that professional editors or mostly proprietary editors would have, in some cases. Like DaVinci Resolve has this for sure, and I would love to see this in Kdenlive. So I can't wait to try this out. They haven't said when it's coming, but automatic masking to remove backgrounds, I can't wait. The game Marvel Rivals came out fairly recently, and already they have issued a ban wave for catching cheaters. Unfortunately, the cheat detector for Marvel Rivals also banned a lot of people who weren't cheating, just because they were Linux gamers, and those gaming on macOS. So like I said, the platforms that were affected are macOS and Linux, including Steam Deck players using compatibility layers like Wine and Proton and also Crossover. Now, the problem is here that the anti-cheat systems mistakenly flagged some players as cheaters, resulting in bans, even to the point of some people getting notified that they had been banned for 100 years. This is affecting so many people that the CEO of Codeweavers, James B. Ramey, commented on the situation, saying that they reached out to NetEase Games to help solve the problem. For those who don't know, Codeweavers makes crossover, and also they help develop Proton and that sort of thing. So, pretty important person to be commenting on this. In a shocking turn of events, Marvel Rivals, they didn't blame the Linux gamers for using Linux and actually chose to fix the issue. I know, this surprised me too. The Marvel Rivals team issued this statement in their Discord. Recently, we've received feedback from players regarding an issue where some individuals playing in compatibility layer programs have been mistakenly flagged as cheaters, even without using any cheating software. This has resulted in bans. We sincerely apologize for this situation and want to assure that we do not and will not ban players who are playing fairly and without cheating. We have identified the specific reason behind these false bans and have compiled a list of affected players. We have lifted these bans and want to express our heartfelt apologies for the inconvenience this has caused. Our mission is to provide all players with a fair, just, and enjoyable gaming environment. Therefore, preventing and identifying cheaters is one of our top priorities. We have invested significant manpower and resources to improve the speed and accuracy of our detection systems. With any ongoing detection system, there's always room for improvement. We appreciate your assistance in helping us tackle this challenge. If you encounter any cheating behavior, please report it immediately. Our reporting system will respond promptly. If you believe you have been wrongly banned, you can appeal to our customer support team, and we will review your case and respond in a timely manner. You can reach out to the support team via either in-game or in Discord. Thank you for your understanding and support. So this is a positive outcome. I am happy to see this because clear communication and support for affected players is, of course, great. But it's also a big contrast to other games like Apex Legends or GTA Online, which decide to completely block compatibility layers entirely because they don't understand that gamers don't necessarily want to use Windows. They do want to play on other platforms. And as long as you treat it properly, you can have a good quality experience with anti-cheat even on Linux. And Marvel Rivals is actually accommodating alternative platforms. And I also didn't even know Marvel Rivals was a game, and that I now know that they're okay with Linux gamers and making sure that they don't get banned and that sort of stuff now. So I might check it out. That's pretty cool. It actually was released fairly recently, so maybe that's why I didn't hear about it. But it does look like a cool game. And yeah, the fact that they are acknowledging Linux gamers are worthy to have on their platform and using their game. I like it. So I'm going to check this out myself. I think it's free to play. Yes. Yes, it is. Okay. So maybe you too could do it if you want to as well. Also, online co-op, not just PvP. I really like that because co-op is fun and online co-op even better. So I always like when a game has co-op but also has online co-op because I might not necessarily want to jump into the chaos of online multiplayer that is always there no matter your game. So having that as an option where you can just hang out with friends and play the story mode, very cool. So Marvel Rivals looks pretty good, and I also very much appreciate the way they handled this. So good job to the Marvel Rivals team. Sure, things happen, and banning a ton of people by mistake isn't great, but you handled the situation well, and you gave respect to the gamers. I recently made a year-end review video about Linux news for 2024, and in it, I talked about how bad the anti-cheat news that would happen in that year, saying, I hope for better news in 2025. And within the first week, we see a company being better when it comes to Linux gamers and anti-cheat. So, 2025 is looking up. I would say, dare I say, that the news from the Marvel Rivals team making sure everything is good to go is marvelous. The team behind the Bottles project have decided to rewrite their entire app in Rust. For those unfamiliar, Bottles is an open source tool for running Windows apps on Linux. You can think of it as an easier method to use Wine. Over a year ago, they announced Bottles Next, which was meant to be a complete rewrite using web technologies like Electron, but that didn't work out. They say that after extensive research, discussions, and experiments, they have decided on some changes. they've decided that Bottles Next will have the following stack: Rust as the programming language for both client and server, libcosmic as the client toolkit, and C# and .NET for the agent. Also, they say that C# and .NET are almost a necessity since WineBridge is a service application that must run inside the Wine prefix and interact with Windows APIs as seamlessly as possible. What better way than using Microsoft's own language and framework, they say. They're also saying that if you do like the GTK client, they do plan to keep that around for at least for now. They haven't said when they're going to get rid of it, if they're going to get rid of it, but they did say that they are planning to keep it for those who prefer it. Also, the CPAC is now going to be an option. So for those who don't know, Bottles is right now only available as a Flatpak because they use the Flatpak sandboxing as a security mechanism inside of Bottles. And with CPAC, you can now have something that's based on OCI images. You can kind of think of it like Docker containers. It's something like that. So this would give you the ability to have some of the security functionalities without using Flatpak. But I'm okay with the Flatpak option too. So I'll just keep using that. So this is really interesting news that they're doing this whole rewrite. They did say that they would prefer to keep it with Go language instead of going to Rust, but they found issues with doing that, so they're just going to switch anyway. But I think this is a very cool project, making it easier to create like wine installations and having the applications you want and doing it in a more easier experience than the old days of just running wine and hoping that the configuration you set up was going to work. And then you have the issue with multiple different versions of wine that you need to have. This is a very cool solution to get rid of all of that. So I wish them good luck on the rewrite, and hopefully it happens sooner rather than later so people can benefit from the performance gains that people say that Rust will give you. So we'll see what happens there. But I think the project is very cool, and if you'd like to learn more about it, you can find links in the show notes. Thanks for watching this episode of This Week in Linux. If you like what I do here on the show and want to be kept up to date with what's going on in the Linux and open source world, then be sure to subscribe. And of course, remember to like that smash button. If you'd like to support the show and the Tux Digital Network, then consider becoming a patron by going to tuxdigital.com/membership, where you get a bunch of cool perks like access to the patron-only sections of our Discord server and so much more. You get access to the live stream and the patron skybox, which happens during every episode. If you don't know, we're actually live streaming the show again on Fridays at noon Central Time. And if you'd like to know what it is in your time, we'll just go to thisweekinlinux.com/live and it will tell you, because there's going to be a scheduled thing for next week that will tell you what it is as soon as I publish this episode. And yeah, so you can join me there. You can also just watch live in general, but you can join me on the stream if you're a patron. And you also get a bunch of other cool perks like being part of the patron-only post show that happens every week after the show, and so much more. And you can also support the show by ordering the Linux is Everywhere t-shirt or the This Week in Linux shirt at tuxdigital.com/store. Plus, while you're there, check out all the other cool stuff we have like hats, mugs, hoodies, stickers, and more at tuxdigital.com/store. I'll see you next time for another episode of your source for Linux news. Thanks again for watching. I'm Michael Tennell. I hope you're doing swell. Be sure to ring that notification bell. And until next time, I bid you farewell.